Hey guys, Veebat here with another V-Plays, getting back to the different types of airframes and how to play them in the game. This is going to be part 5, how to be a ground attacker. So when it comes to ground attacking, there's two different nationalities with their ground attackers, with the exception of the French premium ground attacker. But I don't have that, so I can't talk about it. So in this case we're running with the IL series, which is going to be the Russian line, known for being relatively sluggish but extremely well armored, as well as having a massive air-to-ground loadout. But we're not here to talk about the airframe itself, we're more here to talk about what your role is in the game. And your role is to go after contested or very valuable sites and be able to flip those capture zones. When it comes to destroying a capture zone, taking a look at this air defense site here, you can see that there's a total of 4 buildings. Now, the ones with the squares are hardened structures, which is nice because I got a nasty cannon to be able to take care of them, as well as circle structures, which are lightly armored, which means even machine guns can take them out pretty easily. But you needed to take out all 4 of those buildings for the air defense site in order to capture it. These sites inside of the fenced-in area, you need to kill every single structure inside of that zone in order for you to be able to capture the garrison itself. Each one of those boxes is going to be worth way more than what you would see for being able to take out an air defense site, so those are much more valuable and more where you're meant to go and what you're meant to take out. You can target the air defense sites if you so choose, and currently there's actually a bonus for doing that, so I don't feel bad focusing them down when I can. But generally, you leave those to like your multi-rolls or your heavy fighters with air-to-ground ordnance to take out those lighter spots. Shooting down aircraft can be a way to flip a capture zone as well, but you're not going to get nearly as many credits when it comes to operating a GA in that manner. GAs are going to want to fly low, they don't like going too high, they can't really operate up there anyways, and you need to be careful about where you go with them. You can see that this zone's already been captured, but even if I wanted to go to a different site, it took forever to get to this zone and it'll take us a while to get to the next, so you almost have to look at the map and think, where are my priority target areas and where should I be going? The airfields can be captured by any fighter aircraft, whether it be a heavy fighter, a multi-role, or a light fighter, by destroying other aircraft, but what they really need me for is being able to take these zones that are going to be a little bit more difficult to capture. If I'm not mistaken, garrisons have a couple of heavy fighters up above them, maybe some light fighters, but for the most part, if I can take out these ground targets, it's going to be a lot easier for my team to be able to flip. You have a combination of rockets and bombs with this particular aircraft, but the guns can also do a lion's share of the damage, and I'm being very careful to make sure I destroy entire sites when I go after them. By destroying entire sites, you're going to get a massive amount of capture points like I mentioned before. We only had a sliver left to capture on this site, so I made sure that I focused down that air defense site with my remaining rockets, and I was okay with offloading all of them because I would like them all to come back at the same time, so I have a full complement of munitions when I go into my next area. It's going to take a little bit of time on this airframe for it to load back up again, but yeah, I find that if you're going to be between sites and you only have 1 or 2 of a particular munition left, or I should say 25% left of your munitions, I go ahead and offload it so that way by the time I get to the next site, they'll be pretty much back to fully reloaded. I'm going to start taking out these tents, and you'll note that there's 4 targets, and we're going to take out every single one of them, and you'll see how much capture points we're able to achieve there. And now looking at this air defense site, I am focusing down the 4 buildings, and by killing all 4 of these buildings, we're able to get a little bit more of that capture point that we were talking about before. It's nice in this instance that the enemy already controls this because I don't need to worry about the enemy stealing this site. When an area is contested, it's a race to see who can kill what structures first. So you want to make sure you're killing the entire zone if you're going to be going after it. Otherwise, the enemy can come in and just drop 1 bomb or maybe a rocket, and they can capture the zone just by putting in the last little bit of damage into a site. But in this case, they can't get any of those points back with the exception of killing some aircraft, so By launching a couple of choice rockets at what was left of that site, it allowed us to take that sliver back. But the enemy has taken the garrison we achieved early on in the game, as well as the one in the middle. So this is that problem I was talking about before, placement. How are we going to get back? We want to stay in a general area and be able to take out sites in a sequence, that way we're always ready to go to the next one. When it comes to your proficiency score as well as your rating for ground attacker, like your ground attacker rating 1 through 5, you're going to get your lion's share of the points for killing ground targets as well as capturing zones and getting capture points for destroying ground targets. It does not reward you very much for shooting down aircraft, so be aware of this. But if you do kill an aircraft in a zone, it'll give you some more capture points. So it's not always a bad move to do this. It's just that the game isn't going to reward you for it, which is kind of unfortunate because the German ground attackers are really good at being able to shoot down other ground attackers in their zone. Normally I wouldn't want to go after the airfield, but there isn't any sites left to go after, and a lot of airfields, it's hard to capture it with strictly ground attack. There's just not enough ground targets in a lot of cases to be able to take it outright with just destroying ground structures. You're going to have to kill an aircraft, and we've already mentioned that these aircraft aren't particularly good at that. That particular air defense zone that we were just looking at and destroyed was nothing but light structures, so they're not always going to have a hardened structure there, so just be aware of that. We're using our munitions very systematically. We want to make sure that we're not wasting any of these very, very valuable air-to-ground munitions, because we only have so many available to us. These are all light structures, easy to take out with the cannons available on this aircraft. I'm taking out the air defense gun by itself because there's a couple of hardened structures there, but this will allow me to be able to stop the amount of incoming damage on my airframe. Since you're going to be flying at low altitude, you're typically not going to be dealing with the larger AA sites. The AA sites that look more like a house shape opposed to being a triangle are going to be the ones that can shoot at high altitude, but since you're at low altitude, they're not as much of a concern for you. The only reason to take out those sites is if you have allies at higher altitude you want to help protect. We've managed to get air superiority, and like I mentioned before, we were low on bombs, so I dropped what was left in order for us to be able to get that timer started again. The rest of this match is pretty much decided on this at this point, and you saw that we were able to get a ground attacker grade 2, which is not too shabby. In fact, I found that if you hover over that, you can actually see how many points you required in order to get to the next grade. Those grade points are going to be dictated by how many slices you get on the semicircle for each one of those categories that are particular to your airframe. Taking a look at the post-game stats, we can see in more detail what we were actually able to achieve when it came to our personal score and being able to achieve rank 2 ground attackers. So it appears that you need to get 13 total points in order to get rank 1, and those are going to be represented by each one of the segments on these blue semicircles here. So sections of ground target destroyed, 72, and then capture points received, 295, so you want to capture zones, and then the sectors themselves being captured also gives you points. So everything here is dictated pretty much on destroying ground targets and taking facilities. You are not going to be getting a bonus for killing aircraft, with the exception of that maybe helping you flip a zone. How do I know that that's true? Well, when you hover over capture points received, it makes a distinction that this is earn capture points by destroying enemy ground targets. There's nothing about destroying air targets, so those capture points for destroying air targets aren't going to roll into this. Sections of ground targets are going to include whole entire zones of ground targets. We managed to take out quite a few. You saw us rounding through the area, and if we would have killed just 3 more, that would have bumped up our score just a little bit more, would have given us another tick on this semicircle, but that would have only brought us up to 12. We would have needed to have captured another zone or possibly gotten another 105 capture points received in order for us to be able to get a 13 points for our grade 1 ground attacker. But all in all, that's essentially how you want to play ground attackers, taking out whole sections when you're going in and focusing on taking out each one of those sites independently and lining up properly, because in those highly contested zones, when we were looking at the white circle, when it was early on and no one actually controlled it, you want to make sure you're destroying that whole site. It becomes less of a factor when it's already red and you're trying to swap it back over, because the enemy can't destroy their own ground site in order to get the points back up, but it's going to help you capture that zone that much quicker. We're also able to achieve the Lang medal, which is destroying 15 ground targets in a single sortie and then winning the match. We did not die during the entirety of that battle, and we managed to rack up quite a decent amount of personal points at 12,350. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, as we have gone over how to play a GA properly when it comes to World of Warplanes. And you can go after air targets, but it's not really going to be the best bet, especially if you're flying in an aircraft like this with giant cannons. You saw how hard it was to try and hit a target. The IL-10, which is the counter to this aircraft at tier 7, is much more capable of doing that, as well as the German line. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. As always, like, favorite, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you liked and what you didn't like, and we'll try to make these videos better in the future. I'll catch you on the next one.